Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. If you've recently stepped into a management role, you already know that putting out fires is just part of the job. But what happens when the exact same fire keeps reigniting? Today, we're going to master the ultimate team leadership tool for solving those persistent crises once and for all, the 8D methodology.
Right? We've all felt the familiar headache-inducing pain of the returning problem. You thought you had it handled, you took a victory lap, and then, suddenly, boom, there it is again, staring you right in the face. This explainer will equip you to break that exhausting cycle. You're going to learn how to stop merely treating the symptoms and start curing the underlying disease.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the manager's toolkit, move into triage and immediate containment, then we'll be hunting the root cause, implementing permanent fixes, and finally wrapping up with prevention and team recognition.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the Manager's Problem-Solving Toolkit.
So what exactly is the 8D methodology? Well, it was developed by the Ford Motor Company way back in the 1980s. Funny enough, 8D stands for 8 disciplines, but it actually has 9 steps. They added a D0 at the very beginning later on to serve as a gateway. What you really need to remember here as a leader is that this is a highly structured, team-oriented process. It operates on the core belief that a cross-functional team working together is just vastly smarter and more effective than any one person trying to go it alone.
There's a great quote by Charles Kettering here that says, "A well-stated problem is half solved." And it's so true, isn't it? It proves that jumping straight to conclusions is a really dangerous habit. When a crisis hits, human nature screams at us to act fast and just guess the solution. But the 8D framework forces you to hit pause, apply structure, and accurately state the problem before you ever attempt to solve it.
Looking at the complete flowchart gives us a fantastic bird's-eye view of how these disciplines logically sequence together from D0 all the way to D8. Notice that it's not just a basic checklist, it's a continuous closed-loop system where every single phase builds directly on the data and the findings of the previous one.
Now, if you take nothing else away from this explainer, remember this crucial point. You have to understand the absolute difference between your interim containment and your root cause analysis. Containment is your Band-Aid. It's a temporary measure deployed immediately just to protect your customer. Root cause analysis, on the other hand, that's the cure. It's the deep investigation that permanently fixes the faulty system. You absolutely cannot confuse the two. Okay, moving on to Section 2, triage and immediate containment.
Think of this as entering the emergency room phase. Triage covers the first 3 disciplines. First up, in D0, you assess if an 8D is even required. Is this a complex, systemic beast or a simple fix? You also take any absolute emergency response actions right here. Then, in D1, you assemble your squad. You want a small, empowered cross-functional team. Get experts from quality, engineering, and operations. Finally, in D2, your team defines the exact problem using hard data, answering the who, what, where, when, why, how, and how much.
To make this completely concrete, let's introduce a running example. Imagine you're the manager of an automotive parts team facing a massive crisis. Customers are reporting a super high rate of dashboards cracking, but only after 3 months of vehicle use. All right, so your D0 confirmed, yep, this definitely needs an 8D, your D1 team is assembled, and your D2 describes the exact make, model, and defect rate of the cracking.
Next, you hit D3, which is implementing the interim containment action, or ICA, basically stopping the bleeding. You need to completely shield the customer from ever experiencing another cracked dashboard while you investigate. For our example, your ICA might mean halting all new deliveries immediately, sorting through 100% of your current inventory, and maybe even recalling uninstalled parts. Yeah, it's costly, but it protects the customer right now.
Which brings us to Section 3, hunting the root cause.
All right, the patient is stabilized and the bleeding has stopped. Now we shift our focus to diagnosing the actual underlying disease. Discipline 4 requires relentless curiosity. You're going to utilize tools like the 5 Whys and Ishikawa fishbone diagrams. The goal here is to look way past the obvious symptoms to find the exact origin of the defect. You also need to identify what's called the escape point, the closest point in your process where this dashboard crack should have been detected but totally wasn't. And remember, a true root cause is something you can literally turn on or off at will like a light switch to recreate or stop the defect.
And Discipline 4 really demands a two-legged approach. You have to answer 2 entirely distinct questions to find the root. First, why did the process fail physically? Maybe a molding machine was applying way too much pressure. Second, why did the control system fail to detect it? Perhaps the visual inspection simply didn't check that specific stress zone. You must solve both legs.
Let's roll right into Section 4, implementing permanent fixes.
We have a diagnosis, so it's time to plan the surgery. This phase splits into two distinct disciplines. In D5, you choose and, crucially, verify your corrective actions. Notice the word verify there? This means running pilot tests or simulations to prove the fix actually works before you go and disrupt the whole production line. Then, in D6, you pull the trigger and execute those permanent fixes across the organization.
These steps result in your permanent corrective action, or PCA. Going back to our dashboards, your PCA attacks that root cause directly. It might mean installing newly calibrated pressure sensors on the molding machines and updating the equipment software, right alongside implementing a brand new automated stress test inspection system to ensure it never ever escapes again.
Now, listen up, because for you as a leader, this is an ironclad role. You absolutely must keep your D3 containment measures active while you implement your permanent fixes. You only rip off that expensive containment Band-Aid after the D6 permanent fix is fully validated with hard production data. We're talking maybe monitoring 30 consecutive days of clean, defect-free dashboard production before you finally let your guard down.
And our final stretch, Section 5, prevention and team recognition.
So, the immediate problem is fixed, but your job isn't quite done. Discipline 7 is all about systemic change to prevent recurrence. You fixed the dashboard, awesome, but now you need to update your standard operating procedures, revise those training materials, and conduct proactive risk assessments. Even more importantly, you need to look across your whole organization. Could this same pressure sensor failure happen on a completely different product line down the hall? D7 ensures that a similar problem never plagues this or any other production line again.
Finally, we reach Discipline 8. Thank the team. Please do not treat this as just a ceremonial afterthought. Problem solving is difficult, exhausting work that really challenges assumptions. Recognizing your team's hard, cross-functional effort formally reinforces the exact evidence-based behaviors you want to see in your organizational culture. It archives the lessons learned, and it lets you celebrate a decisive victory together.
By guiding your team meticulously through these 9 steps, from D0 to D8, you completely shift your paradigm. You transform from a manager who is constantly just reacting to daily fires into a strategic leader who engineers permanent resilience into the very fabric of the company's systems.
So take a moment to look at your own operations right now. We all have that one relentless issue just creeping back onto the weekly report. Are you going to just apply another Band-Aid tomorrow, or are you ready to cure the disease? Assemble your team, follow the AT disciplines, and build a system that never breaks the same way twice.